Hey guys, it's Leaf here, and today the video is going to be about the decks I use to hit Infinite. This season was actually pretty difficult for me to hit Infinite. It took me about, I think, a week and a half, and before, it would typically take me maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 days to hit Infinite, so it was pretty quick, but this season was a little harder, and I think it's because I didn't really understand the meta. I didn't really understand which decks were good. I thought just Deathwave was just the best deck. I didn't have Shuri, I didn't have Galactus, so I didn't really know what to play. But then after a little bit of trying to find different decks and researching other people's decks, I was able to find a couple decks that ended up working for me, and I wanted to share them with you guys because I think that they're pretty accessible overall. So let's get right into that. So the first deck we have here, the core is really Magik into on turn 7 She-Hulk and Infinaut, and then we have the Sunspot to soak up the energy on turn 6. Obviously in our optimal play line we skip on turn 6. Sunspot is armored and absorbs all the energy, and then on turn 7 we drop She-Hulk and Infinaut together, maybe even with the Hood's Demon if possible, but that's kind of our big play. And then we also have in here a couple tech cards, and I'll explain those. The first kind of tech card we have here is our Hood into Viper combo, and this can be really good for, if possible, disrupting a Galactus if we know where he's going to play it, or it can also just fill up a lane, which is really good. I really do like the Hood Viper combo. Our next thing is Quinjet. We have a Moon Girl in this deck to copy. Really, we want to be copying our She-Hulk or maybe our Shangchi if they're playing Shuri Ramp, but typically we're going to be copying our She-Hulk, and that second She-Hulk clone is going to be cost reduced because of the Quinjet. So there is playlines where we do have the Quinjet out, we skip on turn 5 to play Infinaut and our cost reduced double She-Hulk. The next one is Carnage. In case we don't get our Hood thrown over with the Viper, we have Carnage to eat it, and also if Raptors come up or they Green Goblin us or something like that, we have Carnage for that little tech there. Armor is needed with our Sunspot. You always play Armor and Sunspot together because Sunspot is so easy to blow up, and I already explained Viper basically, but Green Goblin is another really good tech card for dealing with Galactus, even though you kind of have to predict where he's going to play Galactus, but if you see a wave on turn 3, you pretty much know, oh, he's going to play Galactus in a lane, so that's something to keep in mind. The Shang-Chi is needed, absolutely necessary in most decks right now because of the prevalence of Shuri Ramp, the prevalence of Galactus. If the Galactus comes down and you don't have priority, Shang-Chi, it kills the Null, it kills the Death. And with Shuri Ramp, you always want to blow up the unprotected Red Skull or try to predict where they're going to put the Taskmaster and blow that up. Nowadays, when I'm climbing, I really don't like to play decks that don't have a way to remove a location, and Magik kind of doubles as the way to get a ton of power onto the board and also the way to take out a location that's unfavorable for us and always set it to limbo. So that's really great. In other decks, I use Storm, I use Rhino, and I use Scarlet Witch, but Magik is really helpful here. Obviously, the She-Hulk and Infinaut need no introduction. If you do end up getting leeched on turn 5, you know, it's kind of nice to have the Infinaut in your hand, but other than that, really you're only playing Infinaut if you skip on turn 6 or skip on turn 5 if you don't have Magik, and She-Hulk is just getting played whenever you play Infinaut, or if you need some sort of other combo piece with Shang-Chi, She-Hulk. That's really where you're putting She-Hulk in here. I'll say for this deck, what you really need, Magik, I'd say She-Hulk. Those are the only two cards you really super need, but I don't know if I would really want to swap out anything in this deck for something else. I think that the Green Goblin is super necessary right now with Galactus. I think, of course, Viper and Hood are super good together. And the Quinjet is just so helpful a lot of the time with the Moon Girling thing. So I don't know if I could really swap out any of the Series 3 cards in this deck. Okay, now this next deck I think is really good. It is a original SeraSurfer combo. It's kind of funny because when Surfer first came out, this is kind of the deck that people were running initially. I tried it after the nerf again and kind of realized that this is really the lineup that's kind of working. The reason is because you have so many tech cards in the 3-cost category, and these tech cards are actually ridiculous. You're running into a lot of Thanos. So you have the Killmonger. You're running into a lot of people trying to play Shuri, so you have the Cosmo and the Juggernaut to combo them out. You have the Goose to stop people from playing their big Shuri cards in different lanes. You also have the Goose stopping just various cards, and it doesn't touch your deck whatsoever. The Goose is a super awesome tech card. Polaris is super great for catching people's sunspots because they're hiding behind an armor, right? You play Polaris, it pulls either the armor or the sunspot over to a different lane, then you can Killmonger the sunspot guaranteed. Maximus, some of the highest value that a 3-cost can actually bring you, especially if you play it on turn 6 where the downside doesn't even matter. This deck just feels like it kind of has an answer to everything if you draw the right cards, so you can kind of evaluate mid-game, okay, can I counter what they're doing? If not, you leave. If yes, you typically just end up with 8 cubes. This deck kind of proves to me that the SeraSurfer nerf was actually a really good nerf because he's still playable, yet he's not broken. And obviously, you play Sera on 5s if you can. If not, you play one of your 2-cost cards with a 3-cost cards on curve. That Nova is also there to blow up with a Killmonger, preferably at turn 6 you're going to blow it up. And also, of course, the Killmonger counters all those 1-costs. If they're playing Zoo, who nobody really does anymore, they typically play Thanos Zoo. But either way, this deck is still very playable. I climbed a lot with this deck. Now, this next deck is definitely more niche than the other two. Not only does it win less often, it also probably wins less cubes, and it's a little more inaccessible because you need to have Bast. The reason I like this deck though is because it runs the cards like Rogue that are super good into Galactus Null. They're super good into those MODOK decks that are kind of falling out of meta, but Rogue's still really good into them. And also I like Bast as a card. I think he's quite fun to play. So I do love buffing up the Ironheart, Bishop, Rogue, Wolfsbane, you know, getting that crazy Bast buff. It's just very fun to me, and that's why I play it. But it does work. It does have its moments. Again, with this deck, it plays very similarly to any other SeraSurfer deck, but the main key, I'd say, is holding your Bast till it gets a big hand. And what I mean by this is you don't play Bast on turn 1 if you don't have one of your buffed cards. I'd say Ironheart, Bishop, Rogue, and Wolfsbane, and Brood are the cards you really want to be buffing up with Bast. If you have 2 of those 5, or you have 3 of those 5, that's when you play Bast. And again, I wouldn't worry too much about playing Bast if you have Sera in your hand, because it's only -1 power, whereas you're only really playing her just so you can play 3 cards out. But, you know, getting that Brood buffed up, getting that Wolfsbane buffed up, getting that Bishop buffed up are massive plays. So I do love this deck. I think it's really fun. And another reason I like it is because I kind of invented it myself. You know, you didn't really truly invent anything. Somebody's probably played this list before, but I did not get inspired to do this list by anyone else, and it actually kind of works. So I am proud of myself in one hand, but at the same time, I would not recommend this list over the other two. I think the other two are stronger, so just keep that in mind. Only play this if you really want to play Bast and you really want to play SeraSurfer. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching to the end. One thing that does need to be said is, of course, the deck you run is just one aspect of being a good Marvel Snap player. You know, deck does matter, don't get me wrong, it really does. You need to have good cards, and you need to run cards that are consistent and coherent, but at the same time, knowing how and when to snap well, knowing what the enemy's going to run and effectively countering it are just as important skills as the deck you run and the cards you have. And if not, maybe sometimes more. You can sometimes get away with some bad cards or some suboptimal cards if you play well. But, you know, that being said, thank you guys so much for watching till the end, and I will see you guys in the next video.